What's up, family? If it's your first time checking out the show, let me know what city, what state you're coming in from. If you're outside of the US, let me know what country you're representing. I need you to smash up the likes, smash up the likes, smash up the likes. Also, fam, if you have not done so already, after you subscribe, there's a little bell next to your subscribe button. Go ahead and click that thing so you can get your notifications each time I drop a new video like this. In the building, in the spot, in the crib, in the house, I got on the line. I got on. It's kind of weird doing like these stream videos because it's usually like I usually do videos in person or actually on the line. But I guess on the what would this be like on the what? What is
the video.
On the video? That see, that don't sound right. That sounds like corporate America. That don't sound right. It's gotta sound like like on
stream.
On the stream. Okay, that's better. That's better.
Live on the stream.
Live on the stream.
That's right.
Adia Jones.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, after I received a message about this story, I immediately thought, man, I got to get somebody in here. I got to talk to Adia about the legalities of this type of case. When I heard about, it's so many layers to this case. One, you got a young black male who was running away from the police and he was gunned down. Police say he had a gun, but even if he had a gun, if you're running away from somebody, you're not a threat. But they gunned him down. And then after they gunned him down, he was on the ground and they handcuffed him. Before they handcuffed him, they're telling him, don't move, don't move, don't move. Like, motherfucker, you just shot the man in the back. You talking about don't move. And they're like, show me your hands, show me your hands. Okay, so then, the dude's, his legs are kicking, and I'm talking about Salaythis Melvin, 22-year-old Salaythis Melvin from Orlando. His legs are kicking, which looks to me like reflexes, a man taking his last breaths. And they all got their guns trained on him. Don't move, don't move, don't move. So after all of that, somebody finally says that his eyes are rolling back behind his head. So then they finally go into so-called rescue mode. They acting like they trying to save his life. So first they try to just kill him. Then they acting like they're the same people that's trying to kill him, trying to save him, right? And then one of the officers can be heard. It sounded like I heard him say, you a bold N-word. And then another officer lifts up his underwear and peeps at his penis. Now, and we'll come back to that. Now, the reason why they say that they were chasing him is because he was with a group of people walking out of Dick's Sporting Goods at Florida Mall in Orlando. And one of the people that was with him was wanted for a firearm charge. He was a felon wanted for a firearm charge. So he's walking with 3 other people and he takes off running. Now, he's not a person of interest, but he takes off running and the police guns him down. The cops said that he actually turned to him and ran in his direction. The cops said he ran in his direction, but somehow he shot him in the back. But he ran in his direction. He turned to run in his direction. Cop feared for his life. He guns him down. Okay. The man later expires at the hospital, they say. I think he was dead on the scene. I seen people die before. He looked dead to me. So after that, this guy somehow showed up in court.
Yeah, so what I read was it looked like they dismissed the charges. So I didn't see where he was actually had pled guilty. What I saw was that they had actually charged him with 3 misdemeanor offenses and 1 felony offense. And one of the felony offenses they charged him with was aggravated assault of a police officer. And it looks like he was charged with that on, it looks like it was possibly on the day that he was actually shot. He was charged with it. And then on August 14th was when the assistant state's attorney, which is like the prosecutor there. The prosecutor there. So this is an actual filing. This is a filing from Salaythis Melvin's attorney. So this was filed on August 9th, 2020. And what this is just, this filing is on behalf of Salaythis Melvin from his attorney, and it's asking the state to turn over whatever evidence they have that will exempt or exculpate, which means show that he's not guilty of the crime. So his attorney is essentially asking, hey, turn over everything that you have that shows that my client is not guilty of the offenses that you charged him with. So remember, even though he lay there dying on the ground, the prosecutor, whoever, took the charges, they took 4 charges on that man, even though we see him running away on video. They accepted 4 charges on him, and it wasn't until August 14th. So if you want to go to one of the filings that were made by the assistant state's attorney on August 14th, you'll show it says we do not have suitable evidence to prosecute forward with this case. And the cases were actually dismissed on August 14th against him. Now, they may have only been dismissed because he was deceased.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we can skip that part. I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
But so this is a case where the attorney for the victim is trying to clear his name.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So let's go back to the scene of the crime.
Okay.
What is protocol for an officer when he believes that when a suspect is running away from him? What should be protocol? What is procedure?
Yeah, so good question. So what I'll tell you is federally across the land, across most of the 50 states, most states have aligned with the federal law. And the federal law is the one where I know what you're talking about. You're talking about that Tennessee v. Garner case that happened in 1985.
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay, so there was a case for anybody that's watching. There's a case called Tennessee v. Garner, where a 15-year-old boy was actually running away from the police. And to be honest, he was really running because he was just scared. He hadn't done anything. The police had been called to a neighbor's house because of something going on. The police spotted him in their vision. They see him, they put their flashlight on the young boy, this kid. They put the flashlight on him. They see him climbing up this 6-foot chain link fence. Both of his hands and his feet are being used, so he couldn't possibly have been armed. Anyways, the police officer actually shoots the 15-year-old kid in the back of the head, and he dies. So in 1985, the Supreme Court ruled that it was illegal for police officers to use deadly force. So it was illegal for them to use deadly force if a person who was suspected of a crime was fleeing, unless that person posed a significant threat or a threat of death to either the officer or people around. Now, the problem with that is, even though that's federal law, right? So in 1985, that became federal law. Every state has its own police power. So states have the right to choose if they want to align with the federal law, or if they want to continue going their particular way. Now, what was interesting, I found that Florida was one of the few states that chose not to go along with that federal law that says, hey, we need to limit the ability of police to shoot fleeing suspects in the back. So Florida, essentially, their law allows a police officer to use deadly force if a person is fleeing, if they believe that they were suspected of a felony. So even though we have that federal law, we have that case law that shows, people have been, people shouldn't be shot in the back by police. In Florida, it's one of the exceptions, and they actually can use deadly force to stop somebody if they believe they are involved in a felony.
Should there be some type of latitude for citizens who live in right to carry states?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, like some type of latitude for them to say, okay, look, we are a right to carry state, so, we expect people to have guns. So that's not a big deal. If they do have a gun on them, that doesn't give me a right to just gun them down.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and, when you say latitude, are you talking about latitude to go ahead and defend themselves against police officers?
No, I mean latitude to have the benefit of the doubt that I'm not a criminal. I just have a gun on me, and I'm exercising my constitutional right to have a gun.
I mean, that's part of the Second Amendment. So absolutely. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues that we've seen is that law is often only applied to people of certain ethnicities or races. But if it's somebody of a darker ethnicity, a Black person, somebody that's a person of color, a lot of times, because you have media, because you have television, because you see the people who are the dangerous criminals on TV, and we talked about it before, typically Black men. I think that's exactly why we have officers that go out there and gun them down and shoot them in the back.
Yeah. Why, let me ask you, why is it so difficult for prosecutors to prosecute police officers, but they prosecute everybody else in a heartbeat?
Yeah, that's a good question. Hold on one second, Willie. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Hello? Hey, I'm doing a WillieDLive video. Okay. All right, sorry. I had to make sure the family's okay. So you said why is one of the biggest issues is we've had this thing systemically where, I mean, it literally goes back to the roots where we talked about it before. Policing evolved from slave catching. Prosecution evolved from, bringing back that free labor that America lost when we diverted from slavery, and we really never diverted from slavery because we still have the 13th Amendment under the Constitution. But a way to get that free labor back is by criminalizing people, tagging them very quickly with felonies, tagging them with misdemeanors. And once you do that, a person's caught in the system, and a lot of times they become free labor. So what you have is a system where the police historically have been a long arm extension of the prosecutor's office. And until we get people in those offices that are going to hold the police accountable, that aren't afraid, that are like, hey, my job is to work for the community, to work for the people, we're going to have exactly the same thing we've been seeing at the time of George Floyd, before George Floyd. Now it's Salaythis, Melvin. But we do have a Black state's attorney. I looked her up in Florida. There is a Black female state's attorney. Her name is Aramis Donnell Ayala. So it will be interesting to see if she holds this police officer who was in plain clothes accountable for shooting that young kid in the back.
Oftentimes having a person of color, specifically a Black person, in a power position to actually hold some of these people accountable does us no good, because although they're Black on the outside, they're very much a white supremacist on the inside. They have a status quo type mentality, and they're there to be a gatekeeper to deny justice, to continue to deny Black people justice. Case in point, the Mammy Tammy from Dallas judge. I can't remember her last name, but she just goes to show you, that she presided over a case that big, and I can't remember her name. All I remember is her being a Tammy Mammy, a Mammy Tammy. Mm-hmm. For her to come off her bench and hug a convicted murderer.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen something like that before in
I've
court?
never personally seen something like that. I was disgusted. And at the end of the day, to be a judge, you're supposed to be unbiased. So whether you're hugging the convicted, the convicted individual or the family of the individual, you are supposed to remain or at least give off the impression of being unbiased as the judge. So what she did, to be honest, they really should hold her accountable with the Judicial Ethics Committee where in the state where she is.
Yeah, she should be disbarred.
Mhm.
She should be disbarred. And after she's disbarred, she needs to be tarred and feathered. Now,
Yeah.
by the American people, by the American people, she should be tried and convicted by the American people and dragged into a public square. And whatever comes after that, the American people need to hold her accountable. Everybody that's watching right now, all of the people that's on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, doesn't matter if you're black or white or anything in between, everybody needs to come together and get rid of her. She got to go. These type of people, man, are just they're cancerous. I mean, it's funny that just that we even have to you had to make that statement and say we'll see what happens. They got a black state's attorney, so we'll see what happens. It's like this is what we're fighting for. We're fighting to put some color into this judicial system so that we can have some kind of fairness, because we know that these are human beings standing in judgment of human beings, and they come with their own personal experiences, and it's hard to turn that off just because you're doing your job. I mean, if I work for AT&T and I'm sitting at my desk and I'm a Christian, then I'm a Christian. If I walk outside the door, if I'm at home, when I'm sitting at my desk, I'm a Christian, right? So if I'm a if I'm a sellout, at home in the neighborhood, I'm gonna be a sellout when I go to my job. If this guy over here is a rapist, in the community, he's gonna be a rapist when he get to work. You dig what I'm saying? He's still a rapist. So it's sad that we have to vet those the black politicians, those black officials, even harder in a lot of cases, even more severely than we have to other people. Right. Because we know that's a nice little ruse that they use to throw us off our game and make us think that they're actually in there working for us. So let's say you're the attorney for Salaythis. What's your next step as far as to get justice for Salaythis?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to get justice is, from what I read, is that they're already pursuing a civil lawsuit. And at the end of the day, when you don't have the control, because obviously the criminal side is going to be completely controlled by that state's attorney, hands down. And we keep trying to, your show has been great in informing people. You have to know these people's positions, their authorities, their roles, who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. The state's attorney has 1000% control over whether she is going to move forward and her office is going to prosecute that officer. I think it's Montiel, for shooting Melvin in the back on video. Montiel, yeah.
Total disgrace, because that's my middle name. Total damn disgrace.
Yeah. All right. Disgrace. Okay, yeah, but it's it's completely up to that state's attorney to decide whether they're going to hold that officer criminally liable. So that's on that side. So the only other way that the family really can seek some type of redress, and you'll never get that gap, will never be filled, obviously, but is to seek a civil lawsuit where you hit them in the pockets. So the next thing is to file a civil rights lawsuit under Florida law, where you're saying that this officer used excessive force. Not to mention that, but like you said on that video, I watched the video, and I mean, it seemed pretty clear that he said, "You are a bold NIGGER." while this man is dying. And then not to mention that, they could possibly go into the whole, they're checking his like looking at his genitals while he's literally deceasing, passing away on camera. So all of that stuff can be taken into account and used in a civil lawsuit. 9 times out of 10, a lot of times they'll settle for an amount that's undisclosed, or they'll go to trial with what they have. But the first step is to file a civil lawsuit ASAP.
So how do we get beyond the civil lawsuits and hold these officers really accountable, like make these officers really afraid to actually kill people indiscriminately and just gun down innocent people? If you were the AG, what would you do in this type of case? How do you do your job and not be afraid of the unions?
Look, and at the end of the day, there's a difference between a real threat and a faux threat. So a faux threat is those fake, made up, mysterical, just false threats. And a lot of times that whole police union, oh, you're not going to get reelected, all of that stuff is a faux threat. And we've seen across the country where we have other district attorneys or state's attorneys who have been elected who are holding police actually accountable. And when I say that, for instance, in the Walter Scott was running away from a police officer in Charleston, South Carolina. He was shot in the back 8 times. So he was shot in the back 8 times. The district attorney in Charleston, South Carolina, held that police officer. He was charged with murder. He was convicted of murder, and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. So the first step is knowing what people's roles are. District attorneys and state's attorneys have hands down have the most power and complete control over whether these charges are going to be brought against these officers. I think we see right now with the Breonna Taylor case, Willie, I know you know about that. I mean, they've been pressuring, I believe it's the AG in that area in Kentucky. The AG is responsible for that. And he's refusing. Black. He's Black, and he's a Black Republican, and he has a white wife, and all of these things come into play. And he's, to date, 160 days later, he still has not brought charges against these officers. So it's those people in those roles that are over prosecution that determine whether cases are brought against these officers. Once they are brought against those officers, guess what? You teach people how to treat you. You teach people how to treat the community. And as soon as one is made I hate to say it, they're made an example of, we'll start seeing less and less of people dying at the hands of law enforcement.
Well, I don't hate to say it. They need to be made an example of, just like common citizens are made an example of.
Yeah.
And they have no problem saying that. Mm-hmm. They need to be made an example of. Yeah. So how much do you think that these prosecutors, how much do you think of a prosecutor mentality is them being afraid and them being purposely complicit? Like they actually want to be, they want to get officers off no matter what, because they believe, they have a certain belief that officers should be able to kill certain people with impunity.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to break down the percentage, but what I will tell you, I think a lot of it goes into play. A lot of times the relationships are way too close with prosecutors and police officers. Just from my own personal experiences, when I used to be a prosecutor in the office here in Harris County, people, a lot of colleagues would develop these friendships with these officers outside of the workplace. They would hang out with them. And so, of course, if something happens and, you're the prosecutor on the case, you have complete control over whether a case gets dismissed or whether it's even brought in the first place. So if you're good friends with this person and hey, they called me on the back and I was like, hey, I need you to do me a favor. Can you get rid of this? I'll make sure I, take care of you in the back end. You're going to have, people are human beings, and they're going to do it. So that's one factor. Another factor is you got to look at who's paying these campaign funds. Cash is king at the end of the day. I know we've been pushing people to vote, but voting and protesting at the end of the day is not going to complete everything. we have to start building our own economic money and pushing for our people that, or the people, regardless of their race or ethnicity, like you said, that are going to get in there and do what's best for the community as a whole. But these unions are paying money towards these people's campaigns. So if you have a police union that's paying us, has donated or put $30,000 towards this district attorney's campaign, and now they've gotten into office, well, which side do you think they're going to lean to? Right. They're going to say, okay, I'm not so much scared of the union holding me publicly accountable. I'm scared that I might not get that lump of change next time when I'm running for office. That's another thing to consider. And that is public information. So if any of you guys out there, no matter where you live, no matter what state you're in, if you want to see who's tied in or who's in bed with these unions, you can actually go check their campaign accounts and see where they're getting their funding from. Right. And that's another thing. And then the last thing, again, like I said, sometimes these people have these faux realities where they're just, I think back in the day, yeah, police used to run a lot of stuff with the unions, but it's not that anymore. People are actually getting out and voting. And so that's who you owe your responsibility to. But as people, we have to focus and know what's going on and who's running and go out and vote. We can't just be, focused on WAP. That's cool, but we gotta focus on other things besides the videos, having fun and dancing. We have to know who's controlling our everyday lives.
Yeah. Let's go to the comments. What we got? Manny Lopez, appreciate you. Let's see, Curtis Majors. Police brutalizing and killing innocent and sometimes unarmed Black people have no accountability. Mm-hmm. Let's see, individual responsibility, yet factors and benefactors are set against us. That's what Lamont Wilberg said. What else we got here? Let's see if y'all have any questions for Audia. Let's see. Can't sleep. I didn't talk about. Hard Charger says that's the problem. These police unions are running the show. They must defund and restrict in certain situations. Yeah, I think the police unions have too much power. And a lot of times I see police unions punking the mayors. Mm-hmm. And another thing, you talked about the close relationship that prosecutors have with police officers, but the judge have even closer relationships oftentimes with the police. And so when the citizen walks into a courtroom, they're at a major disadvantage because it's like the system is working to get you. It's like the way we look at it as a citizen, I'm looking at it like, okay, the judge, the prosecutor, and the police, they all know each other in a lot of times. Yes, they know each other. They work together all the time. They see each other all the time. They got a certain sense of familiarity. And all of these people work for the system. All of these people want you, like, we don't want to say, like, you hate to say it, but hey, it's a fact that a lot of these judges love locking people up and they get a kick out of it. How else do you explain a judge giving somebody 755 years? That's to get kicks. That's for shits and giggles. When you give somebody that type of time, or you give somebody who may have stolen a candy bar out of the store a 25-year sentence or a life sentence just because maybe they had a couple of priors before. Like, to not have some moral flexibility in that situation, to me, is unconscionable. How do you explain when judges like give that type of time? I think these judges have too much latitude. These are human beings judging human beings. And again, they come with their own set of prejudices and convictions and stuff. So I think they have way too much latitude.
I think it could be, okay, so I think that's what you call a slippery slope, right? So they use that legal term, slippery slope. So I think it's twofold, and you got to kind of look at both ways. Number one, we have to remember before the cases are even getting to the judge, you got to look at them, even though on TV we always see the judges run everything. You see the judges out there going out there, arresting people, charging people, the prosecutors out on the scene, running behind. That doesn't happen in reality. And in reality, if those cases are not brought or accepted by the prosecutor, then they're never getting in front of the judge in the first place. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when it gets in front of a judge, a defense attorney, and I can tell you, we can talk about that for days. I've seen some horrible defense attorneys that are just as bad as some of the worst prosecutors I have seen. But the defense attorney gets to choose with, whoever they're representing, whether they want to go to a judge for sentencing. So a lot of times sentencing is either determined by a judge who a person who is charged can choose from, either going to the judge or going to the jury. Now you'll have these defense attorneys a lot of times will be like, well, I know the judge, and go ahead and go with the judge. Don't go with the jury. And when you choose to go with that judge and you're going with a one person's decision over a panel of 12 people's decision, and I'm not saying, I've never been in a situation like that where I'm facing life in prison, but that is a pretty hefty decision. And to put that, to give, like you said, to give all of that authority to one person, and you have no idea what their biases are, what their life experiences have been, because all of that's going to come into play when they make that decision. But that's when we say latitude, so that's number one. So that decision goes to the person who has been charged, whether they want to go to the judge for sentencing or whether they want to go to the jury. So you can go to one person or you can go to 12 people. That's one part. But the second part is when we look at like mandatory minimums, when they did used to restrict judges before, when we talk about like drug offenses, I mean, we'd have people that literally, like a kid or somebody that just did something foolish or was around somebody that had like a small amount of whatever, when we had the crack cocaine epidemic or error, when the government flushed that into a lot of our communities and gave more time for possession of crack cocaine. Well, now a lot of the judges, actually the good judges, complain because they're like, I have to sentence this person to a mandatory sentence of 10 years in prison, and they've never been never been convicted of any priors. So when you say you restrict them more, you have to like take into account everything, and so that can be dangerous as well. I think at the end of the day, the responsibility comes down on all of us that are out here watching this. We watch it time and time again. We see the YouTube video. We see these people getting shot, killed, dying on camera. I mean, I don't know how many times we have to see this. And the next day, it's like we're back to business as usual. It's back to, scrolling Instagram or Twitter and just, it's just fun and games again until somebody that is actually on this YouTube video. So our thing is, it needs to be our responsibility to start voting for these people, holding them accountable, looking up their record, more than voting, start making income, so you can start putting money into their campaign accounts. I mean, I hate that. Absolutely real, because that cash, that money runs what those people's decisions will lean towards. If X is giving them more money during their campaign, 9 times out of 10, they're going to lean more towards X's side, whether you know it or not. And then when you go digging into their campaign funds, you're like, okay, that's why they made that decision.
Yeah. So. And that's an excellent point. I think that a lot of us, we're starting to get it. We're starting to really get it. I saw that when I was running for city council. We're actually starting to understand how this process works. It's like, these campaign stickers and posters and flyers and advertisements and staff and transportation and gas. This stuff costs money. It costs money, and you're paying to get your candidate out in front of the voters. That's what you're paying for. You're not paying to stuff your candidate's pockets. Let's be clear about that. That money is going toward, because they're very serious about campaign contributions being abused. They will lock you up fast. And if you're black, and if you're black, if you're black, they're already checking when you first open up your account, your bank account. They're like looking like, how much is he deposit? Right? They're watching. So you better be on your game if you're going to be you're black and you're running for some type of political position. But I got one more question before you go. How do you feel? Well, let me put it like this. What are your thoughts on qualified immunity for police officers?
And I need to do a lot more research on that. But I think, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the same thing across the board that I've always said. I think, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if it's something that I think, and to be honest, I think people that are given more authority and that are given more power, and, if any of us step back and take a look and say, okay, well, who are those people that are given more authority and more power over everybody's day-to-day life? The law enforcement officers, it is the mayor, it is city council, it is the district attorney, it's everybody who gets to make decisions over how our lives and how our children's lives and our neighbors and our friends' lives run. And to be honest, instead of being held to a lower standard, which to me, the qualified immunity gives too much leeway when you have the ability to say, well, I just use deadly force. Well, the problem is, or I was acting within the scope of my employment. It gives a lot of wiggle room for people to say that, and they've said it before. And then those people who have failed to hold them accountable, it gives them an easy way out to say, well, hey, my hands are tied. The law protects them. So I think there needs to be certain carve outs. It needs to be certain circumstances, certain situations. I'm not sure exactly how we get that. I think for that type of occupation, I mean, it's just, you're given a gun, you're given a taser. We've seen officers that are able to control themselves when it's a white person on the other side of that weapon. But when it comes to people of color, or specifically Black people, there is no control. There is nothing. There is not even an in between. Right. It goes from 0 to 100 real quick. And so something needs to be done, or some additional law needs to be put in place. Like, okay, if you extend past qualified immunity, if we feel that it's abuse of power because X, Y, and Z is met, then you are going to be held to an even higher standard than a normal citizen would be if they were to do the same thing. Does that make sense? Yeah. I don't know how to put it together, but that would be my thought. Yeah,
the same way you're held to a high standard if you are a member of the clergy. If you to much is given, much is required.
Yep, exactly.
So, Audia Jones, I really do thank you for coming on the show. Fam, let me tell y'all something real quick before I let her go. The reason why I rock with Audia is because Audia is a fighter. Like, I want y'all to understand something. All lawyers are not created equal. Some people think just because a lawyer went to school and they did all that studying and stuff, well, they got to be smart. They got to know what they're doing. Not necessarily. Some people know how to slide through the cracks or whatever. All lawyers are not created equal. They may be smart in some capacity or whatever, but in other areas, like the area that you really need them for, they are very, very incompetent. It's a lot of incompetent lawyers out there. Audia is not one of those people. She is very competent. She's passionate about her clients. She's passionate about her work, and she is a fighter, my type of lawyer. All the lawyers that I deal with, that's the only kind of lawyer I deal with, is a fighter. So I appreciate you for everything you do. Tell the people how to get in touch with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on our website at www.audiajones, so AUDIA, Jones, JONES.com. Or if you have Instagram or Facebook, I'm at Audia, AUDIA, 4FORDA. That's when I was running. It won't let me switch it. So I'm at Audia4DA on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I'm at the law office of Audia Jones, and of course the Phoenicia Show as well on Instagram. So at the Phoenicia Show on Instagram.
How do you spell Phoenicia?
So it's F-A, N is in Nancy, E-S-H-A. So the Phoenicia Show on Instagram.
There you go. All right. We appreciate you. Until next time, fam. No more talk.